Welcome, my friends. Today I'm going to tell you a magical story that has been passed down through generations, a story filled with love, mystery, and transformation. Let's embark on this extraordinary journey together. In a small village nestled between green hills and dense forests lived a young woman named Belle. She was known for her beauty, but also for being different from the other young women in the village. While they dreamed of parties and marriages, Belle dreamed of adventures and knowledge. She lived with her dear father, a man with a generous heart and a brilliant mind, an inventor whose creations, although not always successful, were made with great passion. Belle's life was simple but full of joy. She spent her days immersed in her books, dreaming of distant places and true love. Her father, always busy with his inventions, loved to see his daughter's enthusiasm for reading. Together they were inseparable, living in a modest house, but one filled with love and peace. One day, Belle's father had to travel to a distant town to sell some of his inventions. Before leaving, he asked Belle what she would like as a gift. She could have asked for anything, but Belle asked for just one thing: a rose, the most beautiful one he could find. Belle's request was simple, but full of meaning. She saw in the rose the delicacy and beauty she desired for her life. Her father, with a smile, promised to bring her the rose, even though he knew that roses were rare at that time of year, and so he left. While waiting for her father's return, Belle continued with her routine in the village, helping the neighbors and reading her favorite books. But as the days passed, worry began to grow in her heart. Time was passing, and her father had not returned. Something was wrong, and Belle could feel it. Meanwhile, on his journey, Belle's father faced great challenges. The road was long and tiring, and the sky, which had been clear at first, soon filled with dark, threatening clouds. A storm began to form with strong winds and heavy rain. Lost and desperate, he searched frantically for shelter. Then, through the dense trees, he saw a faint light. To him, that light was a sign of hope. Following the light, he came across a large iron gate, rusted with age. Behind the gate stood an immense and imposing castle, half hidden by the mist and trees. With his heart racing, he decided to enter, hoping to find safety. As he crossed the gate, he was greeted by an eerie silence. Everything was quiet, as if the castle had been uninhabited for years. But as he entered the main hall, he found something unexpected. A lit fireplace warmed the room, and on the table there was a generous meal, as if it were waiting for him. Not understanding what was happening, but overcome with hunger and cold, he served himself and warmed up. After eating, curiosity led him to explore the castle. He walked through the dark corridors, looking at the old portraits on the walls, imagining the stories this place could tell. Then he saw the garden. A vast garden filled with flowers of all colors and sizes, but what caught his attention the most was the rose garden. The roses were indescribably beautiful, and there, in the middle of them all, he saw the perfect rose, the one he had promised to bring to Belle. Without thinking twice, he approached and carefully picked the rose, but as soon as the flower was plucked from the stem, a deafening roar echoed through the garden. He turned, and there, in the shadows of the trees, appeared a gigantic creature, half man, half beast. It was the beast. The beast, with eyes full of anger, demanded to know how he dared to steal a rose from his garden. Trembling with fear, Belle's father explained that the rose was a gift for his daughter. But the beast did not want to hear any explanations. He declared that, as punishment for his act, the man must remain imprisoned in the castle forever. Desperate, he begged for mercy, thinking of how Belle would be alone without him to protect her. But the beast was relentless. The only thing that could save him was if someone willingly took his place. Meanwhile, worried about her father's absence, Belle decided to go after him. She followed the road he had taken, determined to find him. The road led her to a part of the forest she had never seen before. The mist was thick, and the silence was unsettling. Then she saw a large iron gate hidden among the trees. With her heart racing, she opened the gate and saw before her an immense and gloomy castle. The place gave her chills, but Belle knew she had to enter. Inside the castle, everything was grand, but there was a heavy atmosphere, as if time had stopped there. She called out for her father, her voice echoing through the empty corridors until she finally found him in a dark cell, weak and frightened. He was surprised to see her, but soon his eyes filled with despair. "You shouldn't be here, Belle," he said, his voice trembling with fear and concern. Before she could respond, a gigantic figure appeared in the darkness. It was the beast, a terrifying and imposing creature.
Belle's heart raced, but she knew she had to be strong. "Please," she begged, "let my father go. He only wanted to bring me a rose. Take me in his place, but let him go home." The beast looked at Belle for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he agreed, but with one condition: once her father was freed, Belle could never leave the castle. Without hesitation, Belle accepted. Her father tried to protest, saying he couldn't leave her there, but Belle was determined. She hugged him one last time, trying to reassure him, even though she didn't know what awaited her. With tears in her eyes, she watched as the beast led him away, leaving her alone in that immense and frightening castle. As soon as Belle was alone, she began to explore the castle. To her surprise, it wasn't as deserted as it seemed. As she walked through the corridors, she heard soft voices and whispers. Suddenly, a talking candelabrum with a charming smile appeared before her. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," he exclaimed. "I am Lumière, and it is a pleasure to have such a beautiful lady among us." Belle was surprised, but before she could respond, she was introduced to Mrs. Potts, a kind and warm teapot, and her son Chip, a curious little teacup. "Oh dear, you must be cold and hungry," said Mrs. Potts. "I'll prepare a cup of tea for you, something to calm your nerves." Soon after, Belle met Cogsworth, a grandfather clock who seemed to be the most serious and concerned of them all. "We must maintain order," he said, always attentive to the time and the rules. These enchanted objects told Belle that they were the former servants of the castle, transformed by a curse just like the prince who is now the beast. The curse would only be broken if the prince learned to love and was loved in return. It was a sad and mysterious story, and as she listened, Belle began to understand that there was much more to the beast than she had imagined. Despite her initial fear, the enchanted objects made Belle feel welcome, and little by little she began to realize that the castle, though dark, had a certain charm, a certain magic. However, the enigma of the beast still loomed over her, and Belle knew that living there would be challenging and full of discoveries. As the days passed, Belle began to get used to the castle and its peculiar inhabitants. The enchanted objects like Lumière, Mrs. Potts, and Chip did everything they could to make Belle feel at home, entertaining her with stories and smiles. Despite the situation, Belle began to realize that behind the magic there was a genuine desire to help, to make life there lighter. The beast, however, was still a mystery Belle could not unravel. He was rude and intimidating, and Belle felt that he was fighting something within himself. But little by little, Belle began to see that behind that terrifying appearance there was more than just a monster. The castle's objects also told Belle stories about the prince he once was and about the curse that had imprisoned him in this form. One night, while Belle was in the castle's library, a vast place full of books that seemed endless, the beast appeared. Belle was immersed in a book when she felt his presence. He hesitated at the door as if unsure whether to enter. "I see you like books," said the beast, his voice rough but not as harsh as before. "Yes," Belle replied, looking up at him. "They keep me company. There are so many books here. Do you like to read too?" The beast seemed surprised by the question, and then slowly he entered the library. "I used to, a long time ago," the beast murmured, his eyes fixed on the shelves of old books. "This place used to be my refuge." It was at that moment that Belle realized the beast was not just a fierce creature. He was also someone who had lost much, someone who carried deep pain, and for the first time, Belle felt a connection, a spark of understanding between them. As the days passed, Belle and the beast began to spend more time together. The beast showed Belle the hidden beauties of the castle, like the secret garden he cared for so tenderly. It was hard to believe that those large hands and sharp claws could handle something so delicate with such care. It was in that garden, surrounded by lush flowers, that Belle began to realize the beast was not just the monster he appeared to be. The enchanted objects, like Lumière and Mrs. Potts, noticed the change in Belle and the beast's relationship and did everything they could to encourage this closeness. They created moments for Belle and the beast to talk and get to know each other better. Even Cogsworth, with all his rigidity, began to show signs of hope. One night, during one of their dinners, the beast looked at Belle in a way he never had before. His eyes, once so full of pain, now showed something different, a kind of gentleness Belle didn't expect. "Belle," said the beast, hesitating for a moment, "are you happy here?" The question took Belle by surprise. She reflected for a moment before answering, "I miss my father, but yes, I am happy here." It was the first time Belle admitted to herself that the castle was no longer a prison. In fact, it had become a home, and the beast a companion Belle was beginning to appreciate. The beast smiled, a sad but sincere smile. "That brings me peace," he said before looking away. As the days passed, Belle continued to see more of this side of the beast, a side that was gentle and protective. He was still rude at times, but now Belle saw that it was more of a defense than anything else. And little by little, Belle's view of him began to change. Perhaps, Belle thought, he wasn't as terrible as he seemed. And so, in that castle that once seemed like a prison, Belle began to find something unexpected, an unlikely friendship built on curiosity and understanding. She still didn't know the whole truth, but she felt she was getting closer to it, and with that, Belle began to feel something she never thought she would feel there. Hope. As the days turned into weeks, living with the beast became more and more natural. The castle, which once seemed a cold and frightening place, began to transform into a home for Belle. And the beast, whom Belle once feared, began to reveal himself as a much more complex being than she had imagined. Belle and the beast's conversations became deeper and more sincere. One night, while they were in the garden, the beast told Belle about his life before the curse. He spoke of his arrogance, of how he used to treat others, and how deep down he regretted it all. For the first time, Belle realized how much pain and regret the beast carried. Despite this, something inside Belle was still uneasy. She missed her father, and constantly worried about him. The beast seemed to sense Belle's concern, and on a starry night he took her to a room she had not yet seen. Inside, there was an old mirror framed with golden details. "This mirror is special," the beast told her. "It can show you anything you desire, just ask." With her heart racing, Belle asked to see her father. Immediately, the mirror showed an image of him, alone, sick, and wandering the streets of the village. He was in trouble, and Belle's heart broke to see him in that state. "You must go to him," the beast said, his voice soft but full of sadness. "You need to be with your father." Belle was shocked by his words. "But if I go, I will never be able to return. Will I?" she asked, fearing the answer. The beast looked at Belle with deep pain in his eyes. "I know I made a promise that you would stay here forever, but I cannot keep you here knowing your heart is elsewhere. Go, Belle. Go take care of your father." Tears welled up in Belle's eyes. The beast was letting her go, even knowing that it might mean losing everything. Grateful, Belle promised she would return as soon as she could. The beast simply nodded, a gesture of acceptance and farewell. And so, the next morning, with a heavy heart, Belle left the castle and returned to the village. When she arrived, she found her father very ill, just as the mirror had shown. Belle cared for him with all the love she could, but even while she was by his side, part of her heart missed the castle, the beast, and what she had left behind. As Belle cared for her father, the village began to spread rumors about a monster living in a distant castle. Her father, still weak, tried to explain that the beast was not the monster everyone imagined, but no one listened to him. Fear and prejudice began to take hold of the people, and Belle feared what might happen if they decided to go to the castle. Belle knew she had to return. Her heart was torn between her love for her father and the growing feelings she had for the beast. But before Belle could make a decision, an angry mob, led by Gaston the hunter, decided it was time to destroy the monster. In a rush, Belle tried to stop them, but she was ignored. And at that moment, Belle realized she had to return to the castle not just to protect the beast, but to face her own feelings and discover the truth about what really mattered. As Belle watched the angry mob prepare to attack the castle, despair took hold of her. She knew she had to act quickly to prevent a tragedy. Belle mounted her horse and rode toward the castle, her heart heavy with worry. She feared what might happen to the beast and the friends she had made there. When Belle arrived at the castle, she saw the villagers, led by Gaston, trying to force their way in. She shouted, begging them to stop, but her voice was drowned out by the sound of anger and fear that consumed the villagers. Belle knew she had to find the beast before it was too late. Belle ran through the familiar corridors, her heart pounding. When she finally reached the main hall, she found the beast. He was despondent with no will to fight. It was as if he had accepted his fate, resigned to die at the hands of those who saw him only as a monster. "You need to defend yourself," Belle implored, approaching him. "They don't understand who you really are." But the beast just shook his head. "It doesn't matter, Belle. I am nothing but a beast to them. And maybe it's true." Belle's heart broke at his words. "No," she replied, holding his hand firmly. "You are more than that. I see who you really are, and that's why I came back. I love you." Before Belle could say more, Gaston burst into the hall, determined to kill the beast. He and the beast fought, but the beast, still weak and unmotivated, had no strength to fight back. The battle seemed lost until, in a moment of carelessness, Gaston fell from the castle wall, disappearing into the depths below. Belle ran to the beast, who was gravely injured. He collapsed into Belle's arms, his eyes already beginning to lose their light. "Don't leave me," Belle pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave me." He looked at her, a final look full of sadness and regret. "Belle," he whispered, "I finally understand what love is." And then he was gone. Belle cried, holding him, unable to accept reality. But as her tears fell, something magical began to happen. A soft light enveloped the beast's body, and before Belle's eyes he began to change. The beastly form was disappearing, giving way to a man, the prince he was before the curse. The enchanted objects who had been watching from afar began to transform back into humans. The castle, which had been dark and gloomy, was filled with new life, new hope. The curse had been broken. The prince, now in his true form, opened his eyes and looked at Belle, surprise reflected on his face. "Belle," he said, his voice now softer but still recognizable. "It's me." Belle could hardly believe what she was seeing. "You're back," she whispered, still in shock. He smiled, a smile full of love and gratitude. "You saved my life, and my heart." And so, as the castle celebrated the breaking of the curse and the return to normalcy, Belle knew that they had finally found peace. True love had triumphed, and together Belle and the prince, the beast, began a new chapter, a chapter of hope, love, and happiness. And so, our story ended not with sadness, but with the promise of a bright future where love proved to be the most powerful force of all.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean a lot to me and really help me out. I'm grateful for your support, and I look forward to bringing you more content. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.